At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Holly, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dr. Doug. I'm so delighted to be here.
I noticed you closing your eyes, which I assume was a little quick meditation for a few seconds.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I love that. So, hey, share with the audience where you're from and also kind of the story, the background. It's always fascinating to me. Everyone has a different journey, a different story about what brings them to the point of doing what they're doing now, which is why we have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm based in California, Northern California. So that's where I'm calling from. And my story really starts as an ecologist. It starts as a child who absolutely was in love with the environment and who did a lot of camping and backpacking and, scampering around the oceans of California and tide pooling and things like that. And then I became a conservation scientist as a career, and I studied that, and I did that career for 25 years, working for the Nature Conservancy, and I had a really beautiful, prosperous career there. But about in my mid-40s, I came to a point where a number of things collided in my personal life. One was I got mold poisoning, so I had a really significant health crisis. And the other was I had that, I guess you'd call it maybe spiritual crisis, that feeling, after your kids are, you're not just in diapers anymore. I don't know if you have kids or not, but my kids. Okay, there we go. So, you come out of the haze of your kids, you can actually feel like you can be a person again. And I was really sad about the planet, really sad about what humans are doing, feeling like nothing I did as an environmentalist would ever be enough, and feeling weighted down by the destruction of the planet. And I would say that my heart felt really heavy. And it was a sense where, like, when I was younger, I had that kind of, we're going to beat this. We're going to do, humanity is going to rise up. And it just didn't feel that way anymore. Instead, it just felt like I just felt really defeated. And despite the fact that, I had everything in the world in sense of, a loving husband, and my kids were successful, and I had a really good job, and I didn't really know how to be happy. That's the bottom line. Like, I wasn't happy. And I was like, if all of this has happened and I'm not happy, how could I ever be happy? And do I even have a right to be happy? Do I have a right to be happy when so many people in the world are suffering, or so many animals are suffering? And that existential crisis and my own mind's kind of wrestling sent me on a path of meditation and spiritual questing. I'd been actually into spirituality kind of throughout my life, but this sent me on a much deeper dive into that. And I did do a lot of deep meditation. I was meditating 2 hours a day, and the things that I discovered and the realizations that I had so profoundly changed my life. And I did find the happiness and the joy that was missing. And I got well through alternative medicine, through frequency. And I was so inspired by what had happened that I wanted to help others find the same joy and happiness and well-being that I'd found.
Oh, wonderful. It's so interesting. I mean, the world right now, as you say, is just a nightmare. And it's interesting to me that, initially we want to just try to save everything. And yet I think you've hit on such an important point. If we can, number one, save ourselves, and then number two, start to reach out, even if it's just with the one. Ultimately, if we can keep doing that, hopefully generations down the line, things are going to be so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the path of devotion and service, and that, that is its own path of awakening, really. That what you said, and I say this to my clients all the time, like, this is a put on your own oxygen mask first situation that we're in. Like, we have to find our own well-being. We can't expect others to do it for us. And that's the essence of the spiritual journey and the spiritual quest, right? I mean, that's what we're here for. And then we turn around and we devote our lives to helping others.
Yeah. And, I want to talk about spirituality. It's interesting. As I was looking at different podcasts, I saw one that, quite frankly, was a little bit strange, and I was fascinated by the prospect of what they were saying, because when we talk about spirituality, so often people think of religion and that type of thing, theology. And yet, this podcast that I was listening to was really battering it down, from a theological situation, saying people have lost this concept of God and this whole purpose. And so, as you look at it, and I don't mean to be intrusive here, but as you talk about spirituality, are you speaking of a non-God spirituality, or are you talking about that inner light that each of us as children of God have received?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. So, I mean, there is a lot of confusion and mixing of religion and spirituality.
Yeah.
At its heart, though, there are many paths. And the truth is that some people do find their way through Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism. And I would never be one to put any of that down. I have a very blended religious history. I grew up with a Christian mother and a Jewish father, although it was quite secular in my house. But I have cousins who are devout Jews, and they live beautiful lives, and I would never judge the path that they've taken and where that deep Judaism has gotten them. If that works for them, God bless them. I mean, literally, I really feel that. And at the same time, I think that spirituality in general is pointing to the same one truth that transcends any given religion. Religion may be the path that a specific person gets to, but there is ultimately, in my view, one God. There is one divine source consciousness, and whether you call it God or living universe or source consciousness, whatever name you put on it, it's the same thing. It's the animate, living, alive, intelligent space that is operating in all of our lives, that is holding all of us, that is making everything that we see and everything that we experience possible.
Well, and I think that's so important. So many people, and you get into Christianity and so forth. Oh, we were born in sin and all of that kind of stuff, which I don't happen to agree with. But I think it puts such an imprint of I'm not good enough type of situation in there. And yet, if you look at it, and this is how I do it personally, is I look at it from the standpoint of, yes, do I believe in God? Absolutely. And do I believe that we are children of God? Absolutely. And do I believe that his light is within each one of us? Absolutely. And so I think that's where the key comes in, that, as you say, we may use different words to explain that. But the reality is that within each one of us, there's that light, there's that goodness, there's that love that so often has been somehow modified. In fact, I was listening just yesterday, and I thought it was such a great example talking about eggs and how so often we are within that eggshell. And it's very difficult to break out of the eggshell. But it's only when we do that that we really start to experience the goodness of life.
Yeah, beautiful. I completely agree, and I think you bring a good point. That I mean, spirituality is its heart is what you're speaking to. Is that this transcendent truth of the radiant being of light, God, source, universe, and what we call religion, the dogma, would be, a specific belief, like, we are born in sin, which is not what this transcendent spirituality is speaking to. So, that's to me where the distinction goes. But if we were to distill the essence and the heart of the transcendent truth of each religion, they're apart from the specific dogma. I believe they're all speaking and pointing to the same one thing.
Well, and I've studied that not as in depth as I'd like to, but it's fascinating to me when we look at Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, all of those. If you get back and start to ignore all the stuff that man has created as a religion and get back to those original teachings from each of the leaders of the individual, what we would call philosophies of religion, it's fascinating to me that they all come in with the same philosophy, maybe a slightly different approach, but it's all the same philosophy of becoming.
Yes.
Truly become who you really are.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree.
Yeah. So I love that. So, you talk about different things, and I know that your approach on your website, I loved how you use the 3 A's. I think that's so fun. So you've got awaken your true nature, attune to the living universe, and then align your wild heart. Could you kind of go through each one of those and what brought you to that concept and philosophy in helping people?
Yeah. Well, what that embodies, and there's actually a fourth one. I didn't put it right there at the top, just but there's a fourth one, which is allow the flow. And all of
Okay.
those four embody the core truths of the path of inner rewilding. And that is a path that I created that captures the essence of the four principles that that were essential to my own path. And I actually have a book that by that name, Inner Rewilding.
Really?
And yes, I do. And in that book, I describe both my path and then sort of my own story, and then like a self-help or a teaching for, what I'm about to describe. But in that path, these four points are like a mandala for me. They're like points on a compass, So awakening, we start in the East, awaken to your true nature, which is this essential truth that we're just talking about right now. The recognition that you're not separate from source, that you are source. It's that simple. And, I have specific exercises and pointings back to your true nature, but that is dissolving the illusion that we're separate, that the ego is a separate identity, or that we're walking around as separate beings, and how we transcend that understanding is the core essence of the awaken to your true nature piece, that is at the heart of all the spiritual teachings, right?
Yeah.
So that is the first. But then I don't stop there, because we can awaken to our essential true nature, but we also have physical bodies, and our physical bodies are energetic. And there's this physical reality going on here. So how do we relate to that physical universe? And how do we learn to live lives, not just from an awakened nature, but actually more in tune and in coherence with this living 3D and 4D and 5D universe that we're experiencing? And that's what the attune to the living universe part is. So then it's about sort of starting to tune in and learning how we tune into this subtle energies of the universe. So that's the attune piece. And I think in my own journey, it was such an aha to kind of put this together and realize that, that there's a subtle energetic universe here, that we are basically all giant radios sending and receiving energy, and we can learn to become more coherent and attune to that living energy and live lives in greater coherence through that attunement. And that's where the tuning forks come in, and all of that work. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll get to that in a minute. And then allow is the third piece, and that is the surrender part of the path. So, once we attune, then there becomes a kind of letting go and deep trust back into this, to source consciousness. And, at the heart of that is, for me, one of the key core teachings was from Pema Chodron, a famous Buddhist nun, and her core pointing is feel the feeling, drop the story. And I've used that instruction so much in my own life and with my clients, because when we can feel what's actually here and drop the story that we're telling ourselves about it, we can let the energy that is blocking move. And energy is just resistance to what's here. So this then becomes kind of how we not only wake up, but start to grow up and act from a place of flow and ease. Like, how do you actually surf the wave of life? And that's allowing. That's where we allow and feel, and that moves energy. So that's that third piece, allow. And then the fourth is align to your wild heart. And that's simply what happened to me. And the reason I articulate it this way is that there was a kind of shift from operating from the kind of mental construct up here down into the heart space here. And learning to live from an aligned heart means really feeling deeply and moving from the space of the heart, and then allowing source, God, divine, to kind of be the will that's moving in your life and guides you and shows you what you're meant to do. And then everything also starts to flow from there. So that's where that's where we kind of be in action in the world, in full alignment with what we're really here to do.
Well, and you talk about stories, and, to me, it's so fascinating because really we do. We just live in a story. And in many cases, and in fact, in most cases, we have created our own story. And that is affected by ego. That's affected by, the imprints that we received via childhood, even DNA, that type of memory. And so it's fascinating to me, and as you mentioned, the Buddhist nun, and I've been, reading a new book now on Buddhism because I happen to be here in Thailand, so it fascinates me. But what I find interesting is the stories that we have in our minds are the things that create suffering, things that create frustration, things that create anger, and we're not really enjoying, as you say, that heartfelt existence. And how do you help someone, when we talk about ego and wanting this and wanting that and the stories around us that are really only the mind, how do you help people to start to understand and to overcome those stories and help them to really get back into that sense of beingness of who they truly are?
Well, that's why I begin with the awaken to your true nature piece. That's why the path starts there, because the first knot we have to untie is the feeling of being an ego. As long as we're stuck in conceptual mind and story, conceptual mind, we are driven literally by the stories we're telling ourselves. And so what I absolutely love doing is first helping people get out of their own minds, in other words. And I use techniques from modern non-dualism techniques from the lineage is Mahamudra and Dzogchen in Tibet, where is what I was taught. And in those traditions, we use what's called glimpses. So we use or pointings, and these pointings help show somebody that they're not their thoughts, that they're not their mind, that they are what's beyond that. And so it can be even a mini meditation of 5 minutes sometimes is just enough to point somebody, to recognize that you're not your thoughts, for example, that your
That's
thoughts are what's changing. Thoughts are always changing, but the same you that was here an hour ago or a year ago or 10 years ago is still here, even though all your thoughts have come and gone.
so as you do that, and here's a question that comes to my mind. I mean, we live in the world. We live here. We have to work it, we have to do, we
Mm.
have to support, have to raise our kids, deal with that, all of that. And how do you get out of the story in your mind and yet still do the things that we need to do on a daily basis?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's where just because we're not operating from our mental construct doesn't mean we can't wash the dishes. So it isn't to become a nobody, like blah. That's not actually what awakening is. It doesn't mean we operate. It means that we have an upgraded operating system that doesn't operate from the story we're telling ourselves, but operates from here, from this heart-centered knowing that is connected to source and guided by source, and has full ability to operate and be in the world, but it's like an upgraded operating system, but is not operating from the conditioned mind. That's what I teach.
Well, and to me, that's interesting because then all of a sudden, instead of having to do in order to survive, you're actually doing and enjoying because it's just part of life and part of who you are.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So we kind of get to have our cake and eat it too, right? And I often say that waking up for me is actually more like waking down, because the point isn't to transcend this human body and transcend into the angelic realms. This is a big aha that happened to me before all of the shifts that happened to me. I was so in such pain that I really wanted like God or angels to like come down and kind of take me away. I had this feeling of wanting to escape because it was so painful to be human. But what I discovered in my journey was that real transcendence, real waking up was about becoming more embodied and feeling like I belong here and that I'm in love with life. So I get to be here and be fully human and love being human without the pain of the longing and the feeling like I need to escape. And that happens through really a deep falling in love with life and falling in love with who you are. Because ultimately, it's all actually a love journey. It's all about falling in love with ourselves and the world as it is, not as we wish it would be.
Well, it's interesting as you talk about angels and God coming down, and we're all so visual, and we all, are that way. But then you think about it, if we just open up ourselves and to become, then very quietly, those angels and God come in and help us to experience that. So it's fascinating how we want this, we want that, and that's the story of our minds. And yet, as we eliminate that, all of a sudden, what we're desiring actually can happen, but it happens without us even being aware of why it's happening.
That's exactly right. Yeah, because the mind that wants this isn't that's not it. So we have to surrender that mind. We have to be on our knees oftentimes. And I was on my knees many, many times in this journey. We have to be on our knees praying or begging or, calling out for help. And that's actually what's like the giving up is what allows the grace of spirit to come in.
Yeah, amen to
Like,
that. So as we attune our lives, and this is, I think, the most difficult. It's one thing philosophically to become aware. It's an entirely different thing to then actually attune our lives to that awareness of becoming. And how do you, any stories, do you have any stories of people that you've helped where they face that difficulty, and yet somehow they've been able to now attune their lives and then move on with the other steps.
Well, let me just speak to my own story because that's the one
Okay.
that's really present here. But I remember coming in from a run one day and I looked across the floor and there was just dog hair all over the floor, you know. And in my previous, and all of a sudden, as I was staring at all this dog hair, and I'm like a mom and I've got young kids, and it's like I go for my run, then I come home, then I have to clean, then I have to do the dishes, and I have to do the laundry, right? And I had in this moment, as I looked at that, I had this recognition that it wasn't a problem. It was just dog hair. It was actually just what was. And a kind of grace, it's the funniest thing, but like this kind of grace descended on me. And I recognized that the one who'd made a problem out of the dog hair on the floor was the one that was in the way of me actually just feeling at peace with my life in the world. And so there's an essential recognition here of the way that our mind creates a problem with our lives, with the next thing we need to solve, whether it's to clean the floor or do the dishes or whatever, as though if we were to clean the floor or do the dishes, then we'd finally get some kind of peace or happiness. So this path is about finding the peace or happiness within what's here,
Well,
within things as they are.
yeah, and you talk about the dog hair, and that can be so frustrating. I get that. And yet you think about what that dog does for your children, maybe for you, for the family, and that totally devoted love that they exhibit. And what a difference to look at the dog hair and just smile and be so grateful for that dog, and just the fact that, all right, there's a pain about the hair, versus looking at the hair and just being so upset and so forth. It just changes the whole atmosphere.
That's exactly right. That's such a beautiful example. That's exactly right. If you see it as the gift of the dog being in your house, or a sink full of dishes because I have children and I get to have children in my house, like when we embrace the thing and see it as actually what we've called in. I called in children into my life. And as a result, yes, I have dishes, but I could focus on the children that are eating this food that I'm making. I could focus on the dog. I could focus on any number of things. And if we do that flip, to really see that we've chosen what's there and the joy in what they're bringing, it can change everything. It will change everything.
Yeah, and I on your website there was a quote that I just absolutely love, and we're going to get into this now. Albert Einstein, future medicine will be the medicine of frequencies.
Mhm.
And you know what? Oh my goodness. When we start talking about that, and then you talk about the ancient wisdom healers using frequencies and sound, vibration, all of that type of thing. Could you talk to the audience a little bit about the background of that?
Sure, I would love to. So, and I love that quote comes from Albert Einstein, because he really is like I think collective agreement would be he's one of the greatest scientists of all time.
Yes.
So the fact that he said that future medicine will be the medicine of frequencies, I really think speaks to where his own mind was at, that we live in an energetic universe, and that energetic universe is, at work all the time. And just for people to recognize that our current medicine paradigm is biochemical, not energetic. So every time we have a pill, we take a pill, or we work, they're working from the biochemical paradigm. But there is a whole world of medicine out there that is energetic, and we've had, different energetic, auric, Reiki healers, things like that. But what we're talking about, and those are beautiful, but what I'm actually talking about is the way that we can use frequencies and sound to heal. And this has been done throughout for millennia, throughout humans, way back in Egypt, we're using sound, and there's all kinds of people studying Egypt and the pyramids as being sound chambers for healing, and there's a whole world out there for this. But what I got really into through my own healing quest with mold and healing from mold was the power of tuning forks. And I studied under this incredible woman named Eileen McCusick, who brought the power of, I'm going to grab one, brought the power of tuning forks into my life. And just looks like this, just a very simple fork. And each fork has a frequency. And what I learned through her is that all organs and tissues in the body have a frequency. And they have like what's called a resonant frequency, a frequency that you could think of your body like an orchestra. And each organ is an instrument. And that instrument can be attuned to a certain frequency, and then it vibrates, and we have a beautiful symphony playing. But we could think about disease as actually that one of those organs is not in its perfect frequency. And we can help it come back. It wants to be in harmony. It wants to be in its native resonant frequency, and it will get there. And it can get there through the power of hearing a resonant frequency. So if we bring a certain tuning fork, 512 or whatever, into the field, our bodies, because they're energetic beings, will start to attune to those frequencies. And that attunement is the healing process.
Well, and as you talk about frequencies, what comes to my mind is solfeggio frequencies that you get. You've got the frequencies of bowls. You're talking about tuning forks. What is there a difference, or are they all similar, and yet it just depends on what seems to connect with you the most?
There are just, it's a great question. So there's just different techniques for using sound in different ways. I use this method that I learned from Eileen McCusick that works. She calls it biofield tuning. And in biofield tuning, the biofield is what we have kind of conventionally called the aura. But that we call it the biofield. It's actually an energetic field that surrounds the body. It goes about 6 feet out. Everyone has one. We have a torus shaped field with a positive and a negative charge. Every being has this energetic field around it, this auric or energetic field. And there's science on this. I'm not just speaking in a woo-woo way. There's actually credible science and scientists who are studying the biofield, like Shamani Jain, and they've written papers on it. So you can go look this up and look up the science of biofield and working with the biofield. And this biofield is a plasmic, it's called bioplasma. And what we do in biofield tuning is we bring a tuning fork into the field, and the field stores memories. So memories aren't actually stored in the brain, they're stored in the field. And there's a record of every experience you've ever had in the field. And so what we call trauma we could call that like an out of tune or dissonant place in the field. And what I do with the tuning fork is I bring it into the field, and it that dissonant place in the field that wants to be coherent comes into coherence and then releases, and that's the healing process. So
okay, I want to hear that. Hit that a little harder. I want to hear that tuning fork.
All right, there you go. I'm gonna turn on the original sound so you can hear it. So this is the
okay. What frequency is that?
That's 528. That's the frequency of love. What do you feel?
Yeah, I was just fascinated by just the frequency itself. And I like that.
Yeah, it's also the frequency of DNA repair. It's a very, very important frequency.
So how many do you have?
I have, oh my goodness, I haven't even counted recently. I probably have at least 30 tuning forks.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how does someone, I mean, you work with someone in doing that, but how does someone start to experience that. And by the way, I really believe in this. I'm not going to get into the depth of this, but in my own family, and this happened to be not with tuning forks, but with the singing bowls, a very strong healing of deep emotion and sadness took place. And it was not expected. And afterwards, it's like, holy cow, what just happened? And so I am a firm believer in the fact that these frequencies can heal.
Yeah.
So how how do I go about getting all of these tuning forks? or
Yeah.
or what do I do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you can go to the Biofield tuning store and you can get yourself some tuning forks and you can start to work there. This 528's available. There's another one, the 417, and the two of them together make a pair that's 111, and 111 is kind of one of the sacred frequencies that's found throughout the pyramids. So it's a great pair to work with to harmonize the body. There's a pair of Fibonacci forks that you can use. I also really often recommend just getting a C and a G, because the C and the G are the harmonic fifth, and together they create a coherent field around the body. So those are another classic pairing that just, when I teach like basic kind of introductory tuning forks, I recommend people get a C and a G and work with those. Just put them on either side of your head and feel what happens. And you'll feel this. I mean, I feel it, and countless people I've worked with feel it. You just feel this kind of settling in the field. It's incredible. And the mind, that kind of mind that's bouncy and moving around a lot, starts to settle. Mm-hmm.
So as you say, you got the five, you got the two tuning forks. All right, bring the two tuning forks next to the microphone and go ahead and hit them. I want to hear how that all of a sudden changes the frequency.
Yeah, let's do it.
And what frequency is that?
Well, together they create a 111, 111. So the offset, or the I'm dropping the word for it, the binaural beat. Binaural beat is like the difference. So this is 528, this is 417. So the difference between the two is 111. So that's the binaural, it's called the binaural frequency.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, but these are both solfeggio frequencies as well.
Yes. So, what comes to my mind is, okay, I want to learn about this, but I recognize that, learning about it is probably the first step, that awareness and being willing to do that. How do you work with people, and how do you help them? And then do you ultimately have them purchase their own, or what do you do with folks?
Yeah, so I do sessions with people remotely. So I work with clients all over the world, and you can book a remote session with me, and we can work for 75 minutes. And because we're in a quantum universe that knows no distance. So, I incredibly, and I didn't believe this at first. What I'm about to tell you, I didn't believe it could be possible, except now I've done it with so many people, hundreds of people, that I know it works. That I can tune into your energetic field from across the world in Thailand. I will actually feel energies that are happening in your body. I will feel them clearing and moving. And so what I do with people is I do multiple sessions. Usually people start with like a package of 3, and we meet every 2 weeks, and I work to clear the energies in your field with the power of the forks.
Do they have specific issues that they're trying to deal with, or do you find that just generally out of curiosity, they're going to do that and they experience change without even knowing what the change was supposed to be?
It's usually some of each. So as we're working, we'll be in conversation. And so I'll actually pick up a feeling from the field. So I might pick up sadness, or I might pick up, so grief or anger. And then actually, let me just back up. When I work in the field, the record of the field is stored like along a timeline. So when I start working, I'm working at the edge of the field where you're born. And as I move the fork in, I get closer to your current age. So if you had a trauma at age 10, I might feel that at a specific place in your field. And I would say, wow, Dr. Doug, I'm really feeling a lot here at, around age 10. Did something really challenging happen then? And 9 times out of 10, my clients will say, yeah, that's actually when my family moved and it was super traumatic for me, or there was some abuse in my family or whatever. And then I keep the fork there and we work together to clear it. So it comes up in their consciousness, but then also the forks are doing their magic at clearing it.
And the forks are actually not only the healing process, but the diagnostic process then.
That's right. That's right. They're actually both. Yes.
And
yes,
yet,
it's incredible.
And yet you need someone like you that has the attunement to be able to sense as you bring that into the field. And not everyone can do that for themselves, can they?
No, the truth is that having somebody else work with them is where the real power is. For certain, my own healing journey, I had lots of support and help. And so I really believe in the power, the power of others to help us clear these things from our field. So that's what I love doing.
That's fascinating. Well, and how do people find you?
Podcasts. Some people go to Eileen's website and find me there. I'm out. I have social media, just all those ways.
And what is your website?
My website is hollycopeland.co. Yeah.
.co. Okay.
Yeah. So COPELAND, Holly, HOLLYCOPELAND.co.
And you mentioned your book, and we haven't talked a lot about it. And yet I think a lot of what we talked about comes and is involved in your book. How do people find your book?
Well, it will, by the time this is aired, it will be out, and hopefully we can post that link out. It should be on Amazon by then. So
okay.
Yeah, and the book is called Inner Rewilding: A Scientist's Journey into Being.
Wonderful, wonderful. Hey, this has been a fascinating discussion.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed talking to you, Dr. Doug. Thanks so much for having me on.
It's great. So as we end, what would be that thought that you want to leave with the audience? So as they walk away from listening to this thought will remain with them.
Yeah. The thought that I would like to leave with people is to recognize that you live in a vibrant, living, energetic universe that's working here to support you in your life. And that all you need to do to access it is to really drop into your heart and to feel the goodness of your being, feel the light that is you, and trust.
Yeah, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
And, as we talked about at the very beginning, reaching out and changing the life of one person ultimately can change the entire world. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you for the work that you're doing.
And we will end this with how I always end it. Folks, thanks for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it and hope you'll join us again soon. Dr. Doug saying namaste.